Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Our next guest says he's part of a new movement looking to replace New York's old Democratic Guard in Congress. For the third time in as many elections, he's challenging longtime Brooklyn Congressman Ed Towns. We should point out we asked Congressman Towns to join us for a debate tonight, but he declined. So we welcome Democratic candidate for the House of Representatives, Kevin Powell, to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So as I mentioned, you have run, I believe now, 2 times against Congressman Towns. This is your third run. The last time around, you got something like 33% of the vote. Why are you challenging him again?
Well, actually, it's the second time, because in '06 I contemplated it, but I wasn't actually in the race, was not on the ballot. So this is the second time. Because I think we have to challenge long-term incumbents. Mr. Towns has been in office for 27 years. He's missed about 2,000 votes since 1987. He's had a really abysmal record in terms of bringing earmarks back to the community. And when you look at the state of Brooklyn, with the exception of Burham Hill and Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, where I live, most of the district is very poor. We're talking about failing schools. We're talking about high joblessness rate, high levels of violence, et cetera. And central Brooklyn, where the district is actually the epicenter for HIV/AIDS in New York City, and one of the highest rates in the country.
So as I said, 33%, what have you been doing over the last 2 years to build on that?
Well, the same thing I've been doing for the past 26 years since I was a teenager. I've been a youth, an activist, an organizer, working on behalf of the people of Brooklyn, and we continue to work even after that election. And so what we understand is oftentimes when you're running against an entrenched incumbent, it's going to take 2 or 3 races to remove that incumbent. Hakeem Jeffries from Brooklyn, New York, had to run against Roger Green two or three times before he got that assembly seat. So we were prepared to run again. We knew this was going to happen.
And you kind of alluded to Congressman Towns' voting record. You said he's missed a number of votes, but looking at the votes that he did cast, is there anything that he's voted on in the last 2 years that you wouldn't have voted on?
Well, it's not about whether he voted right or not, because he's a Democrat like I'm a Democrat. So the issue is you're on the right radio station, but the volume is down too low. He's been really out of touch with the community. Most folks say they don't even know what he looks like after 27 years. And so he's been relying on a certain base of people to vote out, every couple of years. He stayed out of the limelight purposely. And as a result, he's been able to get reelected again and again and again. What we've done in this election is shine a spotlight on who he is more than any other person has ever done who's run against him. For example, why is it that he's the 26th highest seniority in the Congress, yet in 2009 he only brought in $6.9 million back to the district in terms of earmarks? Meanwhile, a 27-year-old incumbent, a first-year Republican out of Illinois, brought $19 million back to this district. So we're talking about someone who represents the kind of lazy leadership that we no longer need in Brooklyn or in New York City. It's just unacceptable.
Well, why does he keep winning then?
Because no one has ever shined this kind of light on him before. He's been able to get away from folks actually saying, well, here's what's going on with his record. For example, on his website, he claims that he's brought $1 billion back to the district since 1982. Our response is show us the money, give us an itemized list of where all this money has gone. In fact, if you look at his record of the last 3 years, 2008, he ranked 383rd in terms of earmarks, 2009, 245. This year, he's 193. So he's not even in the top percentile of people who are bringing money back to the district, but he's been able to hide behind the website and pretending that he's actually been doing things that he's not doing at all.
Well, how will you be able to, if you're elected, how would you be able to bring back the money you're saying he's not?
Well, first of all, I'm going to show up for work. That's one of the big criticisms of Mr. Towns, is that we often don't know if he's in D.C. or his home in Florida, or if he's in Philadelphia, or if he's somewhere else in New York City. We don't know. That's part of the problem. Number 2, why did it take all these years for him to even get the chairmanship of a House committee? It was in 2009 that he finally got the head of the Oversight Committee. But the issue for us is that he actually was up for the Health Committee as well. He said, quote unquote, that's too much work, and so therefore he went over to the Oversight Committee. How will I be different? I'm not going to do what Mr. Towns did. When he got into office, he was caught on videotape, as recorded by the Village Voice, trying to take a $1,300 bribe. He was tipped off and he gave the money back. What I will not do is what he did in 2009, where he got 2 VIP mortgages for himself, even as many people in our district were losing their homes. What I will not do is try to stare, as he did in March of this year, $5 million in federal taxpayer dollars to a bogus nonprofit with an abandoned building as its address. I'm going to be accountable and transparent and honest about everything that I'm doing.
And how are you going to bring money to the district?
One, I'm going to focus on jobs and education. Those are the 2 greatest needs in our district right now. We have high levels of unemployment, so I'll make sure I bring money back for job training programs and making sure we have money for after school and community centers. And I also want to pay attention to the seniors. The number 1 complaint I get, particularly from all the housing projects in our district, we have many, Marcy, Sumner, Tompkins, and Pink Houses. We have no activities, there's no resources here. We are suffering in our communities. And so my job is to make sure I get those earmarks specifically for the people who are most in need. And most of the district is poor. That's the truth.
All right, let me talk, though, about some issues that have come up, though, with you, your financial troubles. There have been reports that you owe something like $615,000 in taxes.
No, sir. No, sir.
How much do you owe?
Sir, it's a couple $100,000, but unfortunately...
A couple $100,000 in back taxes.
Right, but here's what I'm saying. One, I've been paying those taxes back. The IRS has gotten checks from me this year, and they're going to get a couple of checks in the next few weeks because I'm someone who takes responsibility for my actions. No one would know about that if I hadn't put it out there myself.
But I believe those reports, though, came out after months of the Daily News asking for them.
No, actually, the Daily News asked me the same week, and they got it the same week. So we got to be clear about that. Number two, if you're going to be an elected official representing your community, you do have to be honest and transparent about every aspect of it. I'm no different than the average Brooklynite, average New Yorker, average American trying to make ends meet. And what I said in my essay about this whole situation, my financial life and yours too, is that here's some of the things that have happened to me around my house, my condo that my mother and I own in downtown Brooklyn. We also got one of those subprime loans, and here's how we got caught out there. So I think I actually am more eligible to be a congressperson representing this district because I actually look like and reflect the values and the needs of the people in the district because many of them are struggling as well. On top of that, I've been on top of everything. That's why I have a wonderful accountant, a wonderful lawyer. There's no problems with my finances. It's all being managed, but when you get it into certain newspapers, it gets sensationalized for the sake of political points.
But, I mean, you do owe, as you said, a couple $100,000 in back taxes.
Which is going to be taken care of, sir.
How does that make you more, I guess, would you say, more eligible, more,
I'll put it to
how
you
would
like
you be a good member of Congress if you owe all this money?
There's a huge difference, sir, between me dealing with my own self-inflicted wounds from a few years ago, financial literacy, or someone being a congressperson who's been in it for 27 years the way Mr. Towns has been, and trying to steer $5 million, as was reported by the Daily News this year, to a bogus nonprofit that had an abandoned building as his address. There's a big difference between trying to manipulate taxpayer dollars for your own personal gain as opposed to someone that's simply dealing with some of their financial ups and downs in the middle of the Great Recession. A huge difference. The difference is I'm honest and accountable. Mr. Towns has represented a kind of dishonest leadership.
Well, are you financially savvy now?
Oh, absolutely. So in fact, we've been participating over the last several years in financial literacy workshops and empowerment sessions all over Brooklyn. That's the kind of stuff that we'd be bringing to the people of Brooklyn.
No, yourself, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because I live a very simple, basic life. I've never owned a car in my life. I have no desire for it. You don't see, only jewelry I own is actually a watch. I think that my life as a longtime activist in the community, as a writer, author of 10 books, actually is very reflective of the people in Brooklyn, which is working class values, trying to make the best that we can out of the situations that we have.
I mean, a simple life. I read, though, that you had a $5,000 a month mortgage. How is that a simple life?
That was a subprime mortgage that was
But
inflated.
it's still $5,000
No, actually,
a month.
it's been cut down in half, sir.
Okay,
significantly.
But at the time, I mean, how if you weren't aware of the rules, or I guess
yes,
how
sir.
mortgages worked, why?
But now I am. Now I am. You got to keep in mind, my mother and I bought the loan. The loan was at the condo. The condo was actually in my mother's name. You know, and so I paid the mortgage. We've got it down significantly because we said this is ridiculous, the kind of loan that we got. The reason why the loan was so much is because we didn't have to put any money down. It was purchased from a friend, and oftentimes what happens is that you end up having to pay on the back end, and that's how we got caught in that situation.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Obama administration. How would you assess how they're doing?
Well, I would give it a C+ for a couple of reasons. One, I think it was incredible that the health care bill was passed. Again, bringing it back to Brooklyn, many people in my district don't have health care at all. You're talking about parts of East New York, parts of Brownsville, Bed-Stuy. Their primary health care is the emergency room. So I'm happy that the health care bill got passed. But again, when you look at the 10th Congressional District in the Obama administration, what I wish the administration would have done was a jobs bill first and foremost, because people are out of work. Every single day, someone comes into our office looking for a job, looking for an opportunity, looking for some help with their small business. And so I think what we've got to do in the second half of his administration, when I'm a congressperson representing New York City, is focus on getting people back to work. I mean, the Brooklyn Bridge and many bridges around the country need to be repaired, need to be rebuilt. It's an excellent opportunity to employ people. I'm a big supporter of the green economy. People go to my website, kevinpowell.net. We're talking about how we can create job opportunities in that way. And then I also think that we have to support labor unions. I'm a big supporter of making sure that we keep jobs in America. Mr. Towns, my opponent, signed CAFTA a few years back, which sent jobs overseas. That's not what we need to be doing in these times.
And you've been critical also of the Obama administration's policy on Afghanistan, I believe. How would you change?
Well, what I would do is I got to reflect my district and my own values. I'm a progressive who's actually anti-war, sir. And so I believe that we don't need to give more funding to Afghanistan. What we need to figure out is how we can have our troops get out of that situation, they can become self-governing. Even if it means that at some point we've got to make sure they get a more democratic and less corrupt administration in Afghanistan. Number two, Mr. Towns, my opponent, went to Afghanistan a few weeks ago, and he actually said after he voted to cut funding just a month or so ago that we should actually stay in there longer, and then maybe we could bring someone like South Korea in to help us, which is actually a joke internationally in terms of international relations. It says that he's really not savvy about what's going on over there at all. What we need ultimately, in my opinion, is something to do with nonviolent conflict resolution for these kind of areas, because we cannot continue to have so many of our young people losing their lives. We should have learned the lesson from Vietnam. We should have learned it from the first Gulf War. Even people in my own community, my own fraternity, have been losing their lives over there in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we've got to stop this bloodshed.
So you would vote you would vote against funding for the war?
Absolutely. I would prefer that money, all those billions of dollars, sir, we need it in America for jobs, for jobs, for jobs. That's the critical thing that our people need right now.
And just one more question, we're almost out of time. What is your position on the mosque? I know this is not your district,
yes,
but
sir.
the planned Islamic Cultural Center in Lower Manhattan has gotten a lot of attention. What is your view?
Well, sir, what I support is all faiths. Something that Barack Obama said, we're a nation of Christians, of Jews, of Muslims, of many people. What I would say, as long as there's a level of sensitivity around the people who lost their lives, I know 2 people who lost their lives on September 11th, so I understand why some folks are upset about it. But as long as it's a mosque, a cultural center, which I understand it is, that's simply about promoting peace, then I can support that. But I also understand why people are upset about it, and I want to be one of those people who comes in as a bridge builder to bring all these different types of folks together, so we can kind of have an understanding of why this is here and why we should have all faiths being represented in our country.
So you don't have a problem with the location?
Sir, what I would say to you is that I don't have a problem with anyone being able to express their views, be they Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. It's New York City. It's the most diverse place on the planet.
All right, Kevin Powell, we are out of time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, it's time for a break. When we return, after 2 days of Republican debates, did anyone emerge as a serious contender for the U.S. Senate? Curtis Lewa and Herson Barrero will weigh in coming up next in our political rundown. Stay with us.